Okay. Hi. My name is Minkyung Lee, and you can call me Minky if you ever need to call me. I guess I'm the only person who don't speak a word in German in this room, so do excuse me speaking in English, but this is already foreign language to me. So, hi. I'm Minky again. Today I will talk about designing the female archetype. What mental image can we as female practitioners have as a role model in martial arts, using Taekwondo as an example. But first, I want you to know and understand that my practice is based on design, especially UX, UI design, doing master's degree in Goldsmiths, University of London. And this is the point where people whose outside of design or tech industry makes really confused faces. UX UI stands for user experience and user interface. This is a branch of design practice where we plan the user journey, mostly in a digital-based environment. This sometimes includes planning for and deciding on the process online customers go through, where to put what and in what form. In the most simple terms, I design websites and mobile applications. You might now think, what's that to do with martial arts? I found a possible link in Henrietta Helena Maria's thesis on human-computer interaction. Though she's using performance and dance as an example, I see a growing necessity of understanding body-based practice to understand and model human experience. And I think there is a huge possibility for me as a user experience designer to explore the scope of martial arts in relation to my practice. I am a Taekwondo practitioner myself. Like many other Korean kids do, I started Taekwondo when I was about 10 years old and had to stop when I reached a certain age point. As a young female practitioner, I felt like I had to prove something to other people to be taken seriously. Because most members of the club that I belonged to were male, and I couldn't find any female leadership within Taekwondo society whom I can take as my role model. But instead, I had a friend who was the same age as me, a girl who used to be my main sparring partner. And I took her as some sort of peer role model. It was much later in 2018 when I registered to a club near where I used to live that I met a young female instructor. I remember the immediate sense of relief when I saw her on the mat. Also, when people found out that I do Taekwondo, they addressed me as a Taekwondo girl, which to me sounded like girls who do Taekwondo are some sort of anomaly that needs to be pointed out. I was the only girl in my club who stayed long enough to get my third poem. Now, almost 10 years later, I've picked up my practice again in London in a very different context from Seoul in the early 2000s. Iris Marion Young, in her essay, Throwing Like a Girl, observes the comportment and movement of women based on her own lived experience as such, after making clear that this cannot be universally applied to every woman in every times. Women often approach a physical engagement with things with timidity, uncertainty, and hesitancy. Typically, we lack an entire trust to our bodies to carry us to our aims. There is, I suggest, a double hesitation here. We often lack confidence that we have the capacity to do what must be done. She argues the three modalities of feminine mobility with ambiguous transcendence, inhibited intentionality, and discontinuous unity. Referring to Merleau-Ponty, she's explaining the lived body as transcendence, as pure fluid action, the continuous calling forth of capacities that are applied to the world. While feminine body exists as a transcendence and openness to the world, rather than simply beginning in immanence, feminine bodily experience is overlaid with immanence, even as it moves out towards the world in motions of grasping, manipulating, and so on. Describing her earlier observation on feminine body again, she says that feminine body existence is an inhibited intentionality which simultaneously reaches towards a projected end with an I can and withholds its full bodily commitment to that end in a self-imposed I cannot. She also argues that the female motion has discontinued unity since the part of the body that is transcending towards an aim is in relative discontinuity from those that remain immobile. But where does these modalities come from? Why are girls always princesses who are lack of bodily confidence, waiting to be rescued? Is this the innate essence of female existence? As Judith Butler says, we live in some way already embedded in cultural relations, in historical discourses. We perform our gender continually affected by the historical context that surrounds us, and as a result, building up and solidifying the concept of male and female. Hence, the performance continues. To quote her book, Gender Trouble, she says, because there is neither an essence that gender expresses or externalizes, nor an objective ideal to which gender aspires, and because gender is not a fact, the various acts of gender create the idea of gender, and without those acts, there would be no gender at all. Gender is, thus, a construction that regularly conceals its genesis. The tacit collective agreement to perform, produce, and sustain discrete and polar genders as a cultural fiction is obscured by the credibility of those productions, and the punishment that attends not agreeing to believe in them. The construction compels our belief in its necessity and naturalness. During the 10 years' time that I was off from the Taekwondo community and somewhere in between the two different physical and social spaces that I've moved from and to, I felt there has been a huge change in the practice. About half of the club members I saw in my taster session with Goldsmith Taekwondo Club were women from beginner to instructor level. Blonnell, on her short article on online platform Stranger Collective on women in Taekwondo, is suspecting the rise of female martial arts population based on social circumstances, while pointing out that according to the data from New York City research firm Simmons Market Research, 48% of people that participate in Taekwondo across the world are female. The article says, this is an interview that performed by her. I think it's because of the stereotypes. Women are simply just seen as more fragile and men stronger, more dominant. So yeah, I do think there is gender divide in Taekwondo. This was the response I got when I asked my training partner, Leah Powell, about gender divide in our sport, Taekwondo. She spoke of how in competitions she wasn't allowed to use the same techniques when breaking boards as her male teammates. I wondered if this was the same in other martial arts. What's supposed to be the reason for not allowing female practitioners to perform certain things? Is it to protect her beautiful and fragile female body? After all, what male practitioner poses like this after winning an Olympic medal? Objectification theory postulates that many women are sexually objectified and treated as an object to be valued for its use by others. So occurs when a woman's body or body parts are singled out and separated from her as a person, and she's viewed primarily as a physical object of male sexual desire. These kinds of representation of female practitioners contradict with the female body as martial arts practitioner, for the body as a practitioner is the original subject that constitutes space, while the body as a sexualized woman exists as an object positioned in space. Because the body as lived is not an object, it cannot be said to exist in space as water is in the glass. In the preliminary research I have conducted in Taekwondo Club, which is based in Southeast London, I've asked the parents of the young practitioners in the club about what do they expect their children to get from practicing Taekwondo and what their child's gender is. For 2 weeks' time at the end of August, the aim of this questionnaire was to see how the parents, as a spectator, who are always staying and observing the class at the back of the room, not a practitioner themselves most of the times, observe the practice in relation to their children's gender. I got 20 answers, which was a little less than I expected because it was holiday season. with 5 of them from the parents of girls. An instructor in the club later confirmed that the gender ratio might be a little more balanced than this, so I don't think I would take this as an example of serious gender imbalance in numbers, especially considering the percentage of female taekwondo population mentioned in the article I've mentioned above. I've charted the most common words that the parents have used to describe their expectations. Most of the answers came from the group who have been practicing more than a year, and I could see that the 3 most common keywords are not so different in each gender group, apart from self-defense in female group. Considering the difference in sizes in each group, it would be fair to say that self-defense is an important factor for the parents of female children to decide to send their kids to the club. One particular answer was stressing this point of view, saying, and I quote, "Most importantly, self-defense if necessary." It could be arguable whether self-defense is a yet another ambiguous transcendence, but judging by the fact that confidence is another key word that people see in female taekwondo, I would argue that it's an attempt of an active intervention to the world. In his paper Towards the Undoing of Gender in Mixed-Sex Martial Arts and Combat Sports, Alex Channon argues, despite the general historical tendency in Western societies for most sport and physical education practices are either sex-segregated or heavily gendered, the practice of many martial arts routinely breaks this trend. Promoting the effect of sex-integrated sports, he says, quoting Croston, "Because the message historically embedded in various facets of gender-differentiated, sex-segregated sports cultures that men are strong and women are weak can be profoundly challenged when women and men practice together or compete against one another as equals in physical contests. Advocates of sex-integrated sports have thereby stressed that playing with the boys should be an option, not the norm for all girls and women if women are to become what they ought to be." While I agree on the argument that martial art practice contributes to mitigate gender stereotypes as it encourages women to use their body in a different way from what we have embodied to ourselves, such as punching and kicking with clear intention and with having full use of one's body, shouting out. But as we have already seen, because martial art practices still exists in the same social context, gender role is still in play in there. It seems simply situating male and female practitioners in a same space alone could not be enough to effectively mitigate the gender stereotype. And as we have already seen in Young's writing, what inhibits female body intentionality is a self-imposed "I cannot," as a result of continuous and active accomplishment through performance in social interactions. Social interactions thus build up gender stereotypical performances, and it also deeply affects the individual psychology, as we can see in an example of very common social tendency called manspreading. Taking up physical spaces is a very clear and direct way of showing who has predominance in that space, and it affects the psychology of the minor group as it becomes their responsibility to be careful and respectful. It takes more mental energy to be mindful, thus restricting the headspace they can use, hence the self-imposed "I cannot," which restricts not only the physical space that women can use, but also the psychological space. So I would argue that it is more suitable to focus on individual female body experience itself. How can I, as a designer, can encourage them to engage with their body in a non-conventional way through martial arts and clearly show them what their body is capable of and the relationship female practitioners have with each other, thus taking themselves and other female practitioners as an archetype. With that in mind, as a practice-based application of my argument, I would like to continue with my research through a workshop as a part of my degree project as Masters in Design. In a single-day workshop, which will be promoted with set code of conduct to make sure that it will be a safe space for everyone, in a group of 6 to 10 people who are not familiar with martial art practice, with the help of other female practitioners, we'll go through basic blocks and attacking movements based on Taekwondo and self-defense. At the end of the workshop, borrowing the performative side of Taekwondo and as a commentary on the gender performance we perform every day, since it is a mere performance without an original, we can change how it's done. Each participant will perform board breaking, and with the broken piece of wood, I'll design a small speed or power calculator with Arduino sensors attached to it that can give feedback when the speed or power is above a certain level with different colored LEDs light. The data read by the sensor can be stored and displayed on the user's mobile phone. This object will act as a manifestation and reminder of their physical capability. And by doing so, hopefully, they can experience their body and the physical and mental space around it in a new way and maybe even carry on practicing. Because I've always regretted that I stopped practicing Taekwondo for such a long time, and I've met many women who regret that they haven't set their physical practice in earlier age. The process and the outcome of the workshop will be included in the later publication. Now, like I said in the beginning, I'm a designer and I specialize in making things. So I would love to hear any suggestion or advice that can make my project better from you, social scientists and practitioners, if you have any. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yeah.
Who would you target as participants in your workshop?
It would be mainly women who doesn't have any martial art experience beforehand. So people who usually feel very uncomfortable about actively using their body.
And if I hear your aim correctly, if I interpret it correctly, it is the physical outcome of fourth generation to actually empower yourself to, hey, this is what my body can create.
Yeah.
Some sort of a transcendence into using your kinetic chain and something very neutral to build a relationship building, so like a physical force output and relationship building with body.
Yes.
I find that a very interesting tool, using something very neutral and visualizing the force that stumbles within me, what I think generally in martial arts seems to be stumbling as a chi or whatsoever. And then I find that a very powerful tool to physicalize and visualize it.
Thank you.
Another question? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Design. Okay.
If there's no other questions, thank you. How do you plan to visualize it? Is it just a pure number? Is it some graphical design where you say this is without any input? Because maybe that's something interesting to say, hey, learning a technique improves you within seconds, within minutes.
Yeah, that's something I think I should start experimenting on. I am planning on making prototypes from next week on, but I think it'll be a good way to include some graphic components to visualize the power. Yeah.
And as you have been, sorry, nobody else has a question. Maybe something that I found always quite interesting when, I don't know if that's technologically possible, capable, but with motion capturing, I think it becomes even a more personal experience. We did a workshop early on with videographizing our movements, where this is a very empowering tool to see positive but also negative learning, depending on what you're going to do. And if you have a visual outcome or a visual representation of what you have been going through and experience and see what's the physical representation of it, I think that can add in a different dimension out of it. I think it would have for me as a participant.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to ask, or thank you for the word design, and I want you to ask what's the meaning of being addressed as. You called it being addressed as Taekwondo.
Taekwondo girl.
Yeah, a Taekwondo girl,
Yeah.
Taekwondo boy. Where you can tell something about it? Being addressed as.
I think, well, I was a kid and it was usually grown up like people who are about my parents' age who address me as that. And I've never heard anyone referring a boy as Taekwondo boy. Yeah. So I felt that was quite weird and like it was not said in a hostile sort of manner, but I could tell that, okay, this was not an entire compliment. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the talk, yeah. And to be here.